Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. College football playoffs quickly approaching. Want to take another deep dive into this Texas-Washington matchup and specifically take a look at this Texas Longhorns team, talk about some matchups, some positions that they can utilize to win this football game against Washington. Really excited to get into this one. This is a matchup where, you have two of the more explosive offenses in the country going head-to-head. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. There has been just an overwhelming amount of support for all of these game breakdowns. Cannot thank you guys enough for rocking with the boys. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, would love to hear from y'all in terms of what Texas needs to do to get this win over Washington, clinch a ticket to the national championship. Dill, going to give you the T-box here. Texas, Washington, what does Texas need to do to come out on top here?
I think it starts, frankly, on both sides being physical, but especially on that offensive side, being able to kind of do something to Washington I don't think anyone's really tried to do. And you saw a little bit with Utah being able to run the football inside in that physical style. I think Oregon could do it at times, but never really wanted to commit to it, it felt like. I think Texas has to commit to it. Use C.J. Baxter, very physical running back, behind a very physical offensive line and be able to kind of dominate the time of possession at the end of the day.
That's where I'm looking at. And you look at how to beat this Washington team. It is one of the best quarterbacks, one of the best wide receiving groups, one of the best offenses in the country. One of the ways that you can try to slow that offense down is just not let them touch the football. And you look at where Texas might have the advantage against Washington, it's along the line of scrimmage. And this goes back to way back in August when we said, why is this Texas team a legit contender to win a national championship? What's different about this Texas team than the past years? And we kind of said it's the play in the trenches. This offensive line, this defensive line, it's the best we've seen from this Texas program in a very long time. And you focus in on the offensive side of the football. You said it best. I don't think there was a team in the Pac-12 that could physically impose their will against Washington, who gets not enough credit for how good they are up front. I will say this Texas offensive line and the physicality in which they run the football is different than what they've seen in the Pac-12. And I think Texas needs to lean on that and lean on Washington in that run game. And kind of what you said, you don't want to get into a track meet with this Washington Huskies team because they can put up points with anybody in the country. How do you avoid that track meet? You control the time of possession. You keep Michael Penix in that offense on the sideline. If Texas can run the football, control the time possession. If you're Texas, you're feeling very good about this one.
And frankly, you want to keep that defensive line fresh because that's the unit that dominates football games. And if you can prevent Washington from kind of going up and down the field on you, that wears you out. And if they start wearing out Sweat and Murphy and some of these top end high level dogs they have up front, that's where you get into an issue. Because again, the physicality I do think favors Texas. And I don't mean that to say running the ball is easy on Washington. No. I think what they've done and the progress they've made on that defensive side, especially in that defensive line with guys like Thule and their linebackers are playing really well. I just don't think they've seen a team that's willing to commit to running the ball physically. The only team that could have was Utah, and Utah just didn't really have an offense without that quarterback spot straight up.
Utah just wasn't balanced. And what's special about Texas is they're balanced. If you want to load the box, they can actually make you pay down the field. You look at the time of possession numbers. Texas top 25 nationally in time of possession, Washington outside the top 70. That's one of those numbers that I'm looking at in this game. And you look at the box score after this game is done and you check the time of possession. If it's heavily favored to Texas, you're probably thinking Texas won this football game. Next thing I want to talk about is for Texas making this secondary tackle. And you look at Texas and why they've had so much success with this offense. Coach Sark does a phenomenal job scheming up those wide receivers in space. So not only pushing the ball down the field, but getting it to guys like Xavier Worthy or Jordan Whittington or JT Sanders in space, letting them cook. And you look at Washington in the back end. Jabbar Muhammad, 20. And this is not a knock on this secondary. I think this secondary, especially in coverage, very good. What they might lack a little bit, tackling in space. Jabbar Muhammad, 23% missed tackle rate. Misha Powell, 24.5% missed tackle rate. And you look at this Washington secondary, maybe something they do struggle with is tackling in space. And you look at Texas and where they thrive, over 2,000 yards after the catch on the year. That could be a mismatch that Texas is going to try to utilize here and exploit.
Well, and the guy is, if you can't tackle Xavier Worthy on the first crack, you might not get a second. I mean, he's such a difference maker because he can, I mean, he can go from 0 to 100, it feels like almost
He's free.
immediately, along with having that straight up track speed to go the distance. So he's a guy, especially you need to tackle. Whittington in another kind of different style of being hard to tackle is what I mean, he has almost that running back way about him when he's running with the ball. And one thing I think is underrated is they like to get their running backs out and force cornerbacks to tackle them because they throw more screens, I think, than any other team in the country. I don't know if
Yeah.
I have stats for that, but my eyeballs tell me
Coach Sark is very like that's this offense. This offense is predicated to getting like, we're going to recruit the best playmakers in the country and we're going to get the football to them in space. That's if you're Texas, you're looking to do that, which you have so much success with against the Washington team. That again, if there is a knock on this back end, it's a very good secondary. I think Jabbar Muhammad's one of the best cornerbacks in the country. It is tackling, and that is something that Texas wants to exploit. Now, flipping over to the defense, a puzzle that college football teams haven't really been able to solve. This Michael Penix-led Washington Huskies offense. The first thing I'm focusing in Texas, and this is, in my opinion, the biggest mismatch in this football game, is Texas inside on that defensive line going up against a Washington Huskies offensive line that has given up 93 pressures. And you look at the charts of where those pressures are coming from, a lot of those pressures come from the inside. Now, Michael Penix is elite at getting the football out of his hands. He takes the second least amount of sacks in the whole entire country. That being said, where does Washington struggle? Probably on the middle of that. They just won the Joe Moore. Like, this is a very good offensive line, but it's led by the tackles, right? Two really good tackles. Where they're maybe a little weaker is on the inside. And you look at the Pac-12, there wasn't really a defensive line, especially on the inside, that could exploit that at a high level. You look at Texas, where they get most of their pressure from. It's from three guys on the inside, and Murphy, Sweat, Collins, Dill. These numbers jaw dropping. Byron Murphy, 30 quarterback carries. Tavondre Sweat, 23 quarterback carries. Alfred Collins, 17 quarterback carries. All from the inside. You look at a mismatch here, which the quickest way to get pressure on a quarterback from that inside, if you're Texas, you need to win on that middle of that defensive line.
Yeah, and especially a guy in Penix who is really savvy in terms of getting the ball out quickly,
Yes.
but also moving around in the pocket. He's not a runner, but he does a pretty good job evading the rush. So when you can come right up the middle and come quickly, there's really just not much you can do. And I think you're right. You look at this Washington, I mean, it's not the biggest unit in that middle, especially at that center spot. And that, like, you just line up Sweat right on top of him every play. That again, I think you said it perfectly. That's Washington hasn't seen anything in the ballpark what Texas can do, and in Texas, because there's really only a couple teams in the country. I don't even know if there's any that can really do it that way.
Texas has the best, and this is coming from a Michigan fan. Texas has the best interior defense line in the country. I think Tavondre Sweat and Murphy and Collins are. I mean, those guys are freaks in the middle. And you said it best with the time possession. If you can control the time possession and keep those guys fresh for the four quarters, I mean, it's gonna be, they're gonna have their hands full. Washington, that is, on the inside. So you're looking, if you're Texas, to establish that time possession, and then when those big dogs are out on the football field, you're looking to physically impose your will on the inside. That's not necessarily saying guys like Barron Sorrell can't make it happen. It's just saying if you're looking at the matchups here and what favors Texas, it is on that inside of that defensive line. Now, the second thing, kind of still going on, like, why Texas wins this football game. This is what this episode's about. It's stopping the run with the light box, right? Where is Washington going to try to beat you? And when we do this video for Washington, what are we going to say is the biggest mismatch? Probably the Washington wide receivers against Texas secondary. If you're Texas, can you stop the run with the light box? Something that really has catapulted Washington in the back half of the season, Dylan Johnson, and running the football. Now, Texas, top 5 in the country, only allowing 2.9 yards per carry to opposing running backs. Can Texas leave those two safeties high, stop the run game with the guys in the box with a light box, and give a little bit of help to those corners and those wide receivers? If Texas can do that, that's probably your best chance at slowing down this Washington offense.
Yeah, and I like their ability to do it mainly because I think their linebackers are so good going sideline to sideline. They don't really need that safety help to come up and deal with it. I mean, Ford, Benda, and Hill Jr., they all can play that way. You can play with two of them, I think, and they both can kind of take a whole half of the field themselves. They're just that's the level that they're playing at. And again, Washington, like they like to mix up how they run it. They run it inside, they go out, they like to utilize that short toss. It's a running game that frankly I don't think gets enough respect, but I also think like Texas's front seven is just so good and their linebackers are so fast. I think they're very well equipped to dealing with the athletic kind of style of run that Washington likes to employ.
One thing that just came to my mind that I feel like we need to talk about in terms of why Texas wins this game, Coach Sark, and we're going to go back to the offense. Excuse me for bouncing around here. Coach Sark, a month to prepare for a football game. I think he's probably, I mean, this is not knocking Kalen DeBoer, who also can scheme up, but I mean, Coach Sark's probably the best offensive play caller in the country. You give him a month to watch film on Washington, get ready for Washington. This is an offense that's going to find some chinks in the armor. You know what I mean? And if you're Texas, what can Coach Sark dial up in terms of exploiting this Washington defense? I think that's a massive storyline that not enough people are talking about. Is Coach Sark in this offense given a month to prepare and a month to script this football game?
Yeah, because he really does come up with some wildly creative plays. I think you're kind of right. Him and Lake Kiffin are the two who come to my mind as like. And Kalen DeBoer is good in his own right, but it's more that he's just got a scheme. They do what they do, and they're really, really good at it. Like Sarkisian and Kiffin especially, I feel like will throw those wrinkles and have a guy come off the sideline later. Like any of those things. I don't know. Like I'm just thinking of things that I've seen.
You'll just see something like a double pass or something that they've repped. It's going to be 3 or 4 plays. And you're not going to see it maybe till like early third quarter, maybe late fourth. Whenever that opportunity presents itself, I promise you, like Texas is going to try to hit one of those plays. And with Coach Sark's track record of scheming those plays up, it's probably going to hit. And so that's another, you talk about Texas and why they might have the edge here. I mean, Coach Sark with a month to prepare for a football game is extremely dangerous, especially when you look at how complete this offense is with the offensive line and the playmakers that they have. That's another thing I'm looking at. This is going to be a really fun one. Now we're going to run this back with Washington. So Texas fans, you might want to just watch this one. You might want to watch the Washington one too to get a little scouting report on the enemy. Really excited to do so. This is why we think Texas wins this football game against Washington. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.